Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are wrestling with a text that is, well, mind-bending feels like a bit of an understatement.
It really is.
It's this document called Reality, Self, and God. And honestly, it's like a philosophical grenade.
That's a good way to put it. It's one of those reads that, it starts off seeming very calm, very academic.
Right.
And then about 3 paragraphs in, you realize the author has just dismantled the floor you're standing on.
Totally. It pushes you to question the very tools you use to understand, well, anything.
And they don't waste any time. The opening premise is just laid right out there.
Yeah. Knowledge is limited. It can only represent reality as a concept. Reality itself is not a concept.
It's such a bold opening because it immediately sets the stakes. The author is basically telling us that everything we think we know, our science, our philosophy, our theology,
And all the libraries in the world.
right, all of it, it's just a representation. It's a sketch. It is not the real thing.
Which leads right into the core metaphor that anchors this entire piece. You've probably heard it before, but this text takes it to a whole new level.
They're classic.
The map is not the territory.
Right. And this idea comes from Alfred Korzybski, a scholar from the early 20th century. But our author here applies it to everything, to the whole human experience of existence.
Let's break that down for everyone because it sounds simple, but the implications are they're huge.
Okay, so think of it this way. You have a map of Paris.
Sure.
It can be incredibly detailed, street names, metro lines, the exact location of every single bistro. You could study that map for years, memorize it.
I could become the world's leading expert on the map of Paris.
Exactly. I could tell you how to get from the Louvre to the Eiffel Tower without even looking.
Right.
But holding that piece of paper or, staring at that screen is a fundamentally different reality than actually standing on a street corner in Montmartre.
Of course.
It's not the smell of fresh bread. It's not the feeling of the rain on your face. It's not the noise, the coffee.
The map is paper and ink.
Yeah.
The territory is life.
Precisely. The map is static. The territory is alive. And the problem, according to our source, isn't that we use maps. Maps are useful.
We need them.
We need them to navigate. The problem is that we've become obsessed with the map. We mistake the menu for the meal. We mistake our intellectual descriptions of the world for the world itself.
We get so caught up in the description that we miss the experience. And the text argues the architect of this map is our intellect. But, and this is where it gets spicy, the text claims that the intellect is a bit of a trickster. It wants us to believe it's the king of the castle.
It does. The text describes the intellect as wanting to be the crown of existence. It uses logic and reasoning to frame reality, to put a border around it so we can manage it.
It creates a box.
It's a box, exactly. And the fascinating, slightly terrifying part is that we get so comfortable in that box, we forget there's anything outside of it.
We start thinking that if it doesn't fit in the box,
it's not real.
I want to double-click on that box idea because the author uses this analogy for logic that I thought was just brilliant. They say relying only on logic is like wearing dark sunglasses on a beautiful sunny day.
That image really stuck with me too, because think about what sunglasses do. They serve a very specific function.
Right, they filter things.
They filter light, they remove glare, they make things manageable for your eyes so you aren't blinded. But if you wear really, really dark sunglasses, what do you lose?
You lose the vibrance, the color.
You lose the nuance, you lose the full spectrum of color. You see shapes and contrast, basically black and white, but you miss the greens, the blues, the reds. The author is suggesting logic works the same way. It's a tool, a very efficient one, but it filters reality down to what can be defined, measured,
proven, or argued.
It turns the universe into a spreadsheet.
Right, and you can't live in a spreadsheet. It cuts out the color, the miraculous, the emotional, the stuff that actually makes life feel like life.
So if logic is the sunglasses, what is the light?
The text introduces this term, the unknowable. Now, I have to be honest, when I first saw that word, I kind of rolled my eyes.
I get that.
I thought, great, here we go, vague mysticism. But the author actually defines it very, very specifically.
They do. And it's crucial to understand this definition, or, well, the rest of the text just won't land. They use unknowable as a placeholder word.
Like X in algebra.
Exactly like X. It represents something that exists, but isn't constrained by logic. It's not that it can't be known in any sense, like you can experience the warmth of the sun, but it can't be captured by the grid of the intellect.
Okay, so it's like trying to catch water with a fishing net. The net is logic. It catches the fish, the definitions.
But the reality slips right through the holes.
That's a great way to put it.
And this leads the author to define two massive concepts using this unknowable variable. First, reality. The author calls reality the unknowable that I know.
Which sounds like a paradox. The unknowable that I know.
It is, but check your own experience. You know reality exists. You are experiencing it right now.
Sure. You're hearing my voice. You're sitting in a chair. Gravity's holding you down. You know it.
Yeah.
Intimately. But can you fully define it? Can you put the totality of existence into a sentence that captures it 100%?
No. Impossible. The second I describe it, I've limited it. If I say reality is atoms, I miss emotion. If I say reality is energy, I miss matter.
There you go. So it's intellectually unknowable. You can't wrap your mind around the whole of it, yet you intimately know it because you're in it.
And then there's the second definition, which is even stickier, the self. The text defines the self as the unknowable that I am.
This is where we get into some deep existential territory. You can't deny your own existence. The author points out something very grounding here, our surrender to biological needs.
Like breathing.
The fact that you have to breathe, the fact that you get hungry, these are proofs of existence. We are dependent beings. We surrender to these needs constantly. We aren't just floating abstractions.
We're anchored. Right. But try to pin down exactly what the self is using only logic. Are you your body? Well, you can lose a limb and still be you. Are you your thoughts? Your thoughts change every second.
Your memories. What if you get amnesia?
Exactly. As soon as you try to define self, it slips away. It's distinct from the reality out there, but it's just as mysterious.
And the text makes that distinction very clear. I can say that self is the unknowable that I am, whereas reality is the unknowable that I know.
And that brings us back to what the source calls the grand illusion. The intellect tries to convince us that if something can't be logically defined, it's meaningless. It tries to dismiss the unknowable.
And the author ties this back to the Garden of Eden story, but in a way I had not considered before.
Yeah, this was a fresh take for me, too. Usually you hear about Eden, and it's about disobedience or sin.
Rule breaking.
Right. But the author focuses entirely on perception. It's a crisis of how we know things. The text highlights that moment where Eve looks at the fruit.
The quote is that she saw the tree was desired to make one wise. That's the key phrase.
Desired to make one wise. She made a judgment call. She chose to trust her own perception, her own assessment, her own map, rather than simply believing God, who in this metaphor represents the territory.
Absolute reality.
That was the moment she chose the map over the reality. She chose the representation, this fruit will make me wise, over her actual connection with the Creator.
Wow. So it's the moment we decided we'd rather be the architects of our own reality than residents of the real one.
Perfectly put. And the argument is that ever since then, we've been trying to draw our own world. The author uses this metaphor of a blank canvas.
Reality is the canvas.
Right. Artists draw on it, scientists build on it, but we're all just scribbling on the surface. We are obsessed with our frames.
So we have the map, which is our knowledge, our science, our logic, the dark sunglasses. And then we have the territory, which is the unknowable reality and self. But the source doesn't stop there.
No, it introduces a third element, God.
The unknowable who makes himself known.
That's the definition the text uses. God is distinct from reality and distinct from self. He is beyond both.
And this is where we hit the hard pivot in the text. Because up until now, this could just be a secular philosophy paper. But the author goes hard into theology.
But not in the way you'd expect.
Not at all. They basically say that religion is just another map.
This is a crucial point, and it's one that might, ruffle some feathers. The author argues that just as the secular world mistakes science for absolute reality,
religious people often mistake doctrine for God. They mistake the study of God for the experience of God.
Yes. Which leads to the training wheels analogy.
I loved this. It's so disarming.
It is. The author says theology is like training wheels for a kid learning to ride a bike. They serve a purpose, right? They help you get started. They keep you from falling over while you learn to pedal.
But, and this is the kicker, they are not the destination. You aren't meant to ride the Tour de France with training wheels on.
And yet people defend their training wheels with their lives. They polish them. They argue about which brand is best.
Because they think the training wheels are the bike ride.
That's the danger. The text argues that theology is still just knowledge. It's still a product of the intellect. Therefore, it is still a map. It's limited.
If you think you can understand the infinite creator purely through systematic theology, the author says you are just knowing a thought.
not knowing God.
That is a heavy distinction. Knowing a thought versus knowing a person.
Yeah.
I can know everything about a celebrity, but that doesn't mean I know them.
Exactly, and it raises a fascinating question about faith. The source suggests the intellect can actually become a prison. It calls the intellect a faithful guard, keeping us locked inside the prison of knowledge.
Why a faithful guard? That sounds almost positive.
Because the intellect is trying to protect us, we feel safe in the prison, we have our systematic theologies, our creeds, our apologetics, everything is tidy.
The walls are solid.
We know where the boundaries are.
Yep.
But the author warns that this safety is an illusion.
They use strong words here, deception and delusion.
Yes. Deception and delusion are real. The warning is that if you trust the map more than the destination, you are liable to be deceived. You can memorize the map of Paris and still never actually go there.
You can memorize the Bible and never know God.
Right?
So if the map isn't the territory, and theology is just a map, and logic is wearing sunglasses, how on earth do we actually find God? The text says we can't climb the ladder of knowledge.
No ladder. The author is very clear. You cannot think your way to God. You can't discover him through a superior intellect. The key phrase the source uses is,
I know which one.
We find God when we come to the end of ourselves.
The end of ourselves. That sounds ominous, but also maybe liberating.
It's the moment of surrender. It's acknowledging that your intellect, your map, it's all insufficient. The text says we have to let go of all that we think we know.
We have to acknowledge our existence before God with nothing in between. No concepts, no definitions.
Just the unknowable I am, facing the unknowable who makes himself known.
It seems like the author is just stripping away every layer of defense we have. Science, a map, theology, training wheels. What's left?
Revelation. That's the core argument here. The author states that because God is beyond reality and self, we have zero capacity to reach him on our own. He must reveal himself.
If he doesn't, we're hopeless.
We wouldn't even know what it means to know him.
And this is where the text brings in the specific role of Jesus Christ. And again, it's not presented as, here's a historical figure to study.
No, it's much more functional. It's ontological. It's about the nature of being. The author presents Jesus not as a subject of study, but as the method by which the unknowable makes himself known.
The way, the truth, and the life.
Exactly. The author interprets this to mean that everything Jesus said and did was a mechanism for God to bridge that gap between the map and the territory.
There's this really interesting part about the words of Jesus. The author says they are placeholders. Can we dig into that? Because usually we analyze words for their dictionary definitions.
Right, we parse the grammar to death. This is a very nuanced point. The source argues that Jesus' words are different. They are spirit and life. They act as placeholders, almost like hyperlinks, that allow the Spirit of God to reveal the meaning internally. It's not an intellectual transfer of data.
It's a spiritual resonance. So it's like the words are the key, but the understanding is the door unlocking inside you.
Exactly. If you just read the words on the page, you're back on the map, you're analyzing the ink. The text says we try to fit the infinite into our finite logic. But if we believe Jesus, if we trust the person, not just analyze the text, the Spirit reveals the reality behind the words. It bypasses the dark sunglasses.
It bypasses the filter. The text contrasts this with how the rest of the world operates. It talks about paradigm shifts.
I love that buzzword.
Oh, yeah. In science and culture, we have these endless cycles. We learn something new, we shift our paradigm, we think, aha, now we have the truth.
But then 100 years later, we shift again. Newtonian physics gives way to relativity, which gives way to quantum mechanics. The author calls this an endless cycle that never arrives at ultimate reality.
It's just redrawing the map over and over again, making it higher resolution, but never actually stepping into the territory.
Whereas the absolute real, which is God, doesn't change. It's not subject to our paradigm shifts.
Accessing that requires that end of ourselves we talked about.
It requires exiting the prison of knowledge. Which brings us to the ending of the source text. And I found this story incredibly moving. It's about St. Thomas Aquinas.
Okay, so for listeners who might not know, who was Aquinas in the context of maps?
Oh, Aquinas was the ultimate map maker, one of the greatest intellects in human history. In the 13th century, he wrote the Summa Theologica.
A masterpiece.
It is a massive, multi-volume masterpiece. He systematized everything about God, faith, and reason. It is the cathedral of logic. If anyone had a good map, it was Thomas Aquinas.
So he spent his life building the perfect training wheels.
Essentially, yes. And then, toward the end of his life, he was saying Mass, and he had a mystical experience. He encountered the territory, if you will.
He didn't write down what happened.
No, the details are vague. but the effect was immediate. After that experience, he stopped writing. He famously said, "I can write no more. I have seen things that make my writings like straw."
Straw. He looked at his life's work. This thing scholars still study today. And compared to the reality of God, he called it dry grass.
It's a humbling conclusion. The author uses this to drive the point home. We can spend our lives polishing our arguments, refining our theology, drawing the most beautiful maps, but in the face of the real,
it's all just straw. It's a sketch on a chalkboard compared to the sunrise. It really forces you to ask yourself what you're chasing. Are you chasing the satisfaction of being right, of having the best map, or the actual experience?
And the author's warning is that you can't have both in the same way. If you cling to the map, to the safety of the intellect, you might miss the experience. You have to be willing to let the straw go.
We find God when we come to the end of ourselves. That line's going to stick with me. It's the paradox of the whole piece. We need knowledge, we need the map to get to the grocery store. But when it comes to the ultimate questions, the map actually gets in the way. It blocks the view.
So we have the architect, our intellect, wearing dark sunglasses, building a prison of knowledge, and guarding it faithfully. And the only way out is to realize the training wheels are just training wheels.
And step out into the unknowable. With the trust that the unknowable has made himself known. That's the hope the text offers. We aren't stepping into a void.
We are stepping into a relationship that logic simply cannot contain. It's a lot to process. It challenges the skeptic for sure, but I think it challenges the religious person even more. It tells them their doctrine isn't God.
That their precious map is just paper. It levels the playing field. Everyone is holding a map. The question is, who is willing to put it down?
That is the question.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with that thought. We all have our maps, our political views, our scientific understandings, our theological frameworks. They make us feel safe. But are you content with the map? Are you happy just knowing the definition of water, or do you want to drink?
Are you willing to drop the straw to experience the territory?
Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but man, was it worth it. We'll catch you on the next one.